The H2O Show
on BBC Radio Solent.
Good afternoon, I'm Shelley, Jory-Leigh, and this week the programme is being recorded at the Marine Skills Centre in Woolston. Also this week, Tracey Clarke is at the new National Maritime Operations Centre in Fareham. With Cowes Week just a month away now, Sir Robin has been chatting with the man at the top and finding out why it's a significant year for him. And Neil's been looking for World War I wrecks. With me at the Marine Skills Centre is Gary Fisher, the centre manager. Thank you for inviting us in, Gary. It's an amazing place. Just tell me about why was it set up?
I think it was set up originally as a boat building training academy back in 1980. City College bought the property back in 2000, and it's been a boat building or part of City College ever since then.
And how does it work? Who comes here? Why do they come here? What's the sort of scheme they can get involved in?
Okay, so it could be a school leaver. Someone at 16 leaves school, wants to come into the marine industry as a boat builder, as an engineer. They can come here and start studies with us. It could be an apprentice, someone who's got an apprenticeship with the company. They come back to us on a day release. It could be someone who's been working in industry for a while and they want to upskill or get new qualifications. So there's no one size fits all. It depends what qualifications they want at the end of it.
And presumably no age, sort of, if a 50-year-old wants to come back and sort of change career, they could?
Absolutely. We've got a 53-year-old this year who was a well-respected artist, wants to be a boat builder, so he came back and he's just finished level 3.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Now, the younger students, they're obviously coming out of school and wanting to go into the maritime world industry in some sort. What sort of projects can they do here? Is it everything from boat building to wood to fiberglass? What can they do?
Yeah, in the first year, we give them a taste of everything. So they do
so
metalwork.
They can sort of see what they like the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We used to pigeonhole them, sort of get them as either an engineer, as a boat builder, or as an electrician. But actually this year, we've put them through and they do a little bit of everything. So they get a taster at the end of it.
And have you found that's better for them?
Absolutely, yeah. When they go out to work experience, that then sort of gives them their informed decision of what they're going to do at the end of it.
Brilliant. Right, can we have a tour, please?
Absolutely.
Right, lead the way, Gary. Well, while he does that, let's look ahead to Cowes Week. There's just a few weeks to go now before the world-famous regatta draws thousands to the town. But this year it sees the end of an era. Sir Robin has been chatting to Cowes Week's Director of Sailing, Stuart Quarrie, to find out why.
Well, this is going to be an important year for Cowes Week, really, because long-standing organiser Stuart Quarrie, this is the last year, Stuart. We're going to miss you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to miss Cowes Week as well, and everything that goes with it.
But won't you be there as a sailor, perhaps?
I might be back as a sailor, although my wife and I might be out somewhere sunnier, even sunnier, in our own cruising boat.
Sounds good to me. How long have you been running Cowes Week, Stuart?
Joined in June 1998, immediately after I'd finished that year's Whitbread race, and ever since Dan Bradby, my predecessor, left immediately after at the end of that Cowes Week, I've been in charge.
So for 17 years, you've basically organised the racing at Cowes Week. What changes have you noticed?
Just before I answer that, yes, I have, but with a huge team of volunteers and a small team of staff as well, so it's not just me. I think the main change, and partly what I was brought in to do, is we've really listened to the sailors. We've made huge efforts at getting feedback, and we don't do everything that everybody asks us to do. Sometimes we don't want to, sometimes we can't, sometimes we just don't think it'd be good for the regatta, but we really do listen. And so I think the biggest change is that we try at least to give the sailors what they want and recognise very much that they're the customers, and without them there is no Cowes Week.
I mean, your position actually has been terribly important, because Cowes Week is, well, probably the best known, biggest regatta of its kind anywhere in the world, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and there are lots of different regattas of different types, but of its kind it's the biggest, and we like to think it's at least as well run as any other.
Now, over the last few years we've had a recession the world over, and most regattas have suffered badly. I think Ford Court Week would be an example of one that's really shrunk enormously. But on the whole, Cowes Week has held up with a number of competitors, hasn't it?
Yes, we have, and in our dreams we'd like to think that's because we do such a marvellous job, but the reality is that 80% of our customer base keep their boats within the Greater Solent region, so they haven't got very far to come, and if they want to, they can do Cowes Week relatively on the cheap, keeping the boats in their home berths and coming over just for the day's racing. Whereas somewhere like Cork Week, you have a fairly big effort to get there and get back again, and that's made a big difference.
Yes, I mean, when you first started, how many boats were you getting in the regatta?
When I was first there, it was about 700 or so, 700, 750. It peaked at about 1,000, just about 1,000, and we're back down to about 800, but slowly coming up from that bottom number now.
I mean, it is a sporting event, of course, Cowes Week. How many different classes do you normally have to deal with?
It depends year on year, but there are between 35 and 40 classes in the regatta, each of them with one race a day for the 8 days. So it's an awful lot of races.
So you've got to arrange 35 to 40 separate starts from presumably the squadron line and organise watching them all the way around the track, and then timing them at the finish to make sure the right person wins or the right person's recorded as winning. There's a lot of work involved in that.
There is a lot of work, and we actually have 4 different start lines now. So because the number of classes, one start line was it takes too long to start everybody. But yes, the finishing, recording all the finish times, and race officers are bound with 800 plus boats. Race officers are bound to miss a few, to get a few numbers wrong. But we have backup systems. So by late in the evening, we always have all the boats. And the 17 years I've been there, we've never missed a boat that finished. And that's saying something. And that's mainly because of the IT backup we've had over the years from Next Generation Results. Been partners for years and years.
I must say it is impressive. I mean, you get your boat in, you tidy up, and you walk up to the office, and there's the results already of the race you've been in.
Absolutely. Only provisional at that stage, because somebody might be protesting you.
Yeah. Well, forgetting about protests, I usually find I'm not quite where I'd hoped I'd be.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that.
So, apart from going off cruising, perhaps?
Yes, after this year's event, we're planning to go cruising for a couple of months. Not nowhere very far, probably just North France, and then next year a little bit further afield, probably down to the southwest corner of France, and then maybe Baltic the following year. Apart from that, I need to earn a bit of money to boost my meagre pension, and I'm not sure where that's going to come from. Mixture of sailing and I don't know what.
You bring a lot of expertise to it, whatever it is. Tell me something, Stuart. If you were to come back, supposing you went off cruising for 10 years, and you would come back in 10 years' time, what would you hope to see at Cowes Week?
I'd really hope that the event was still major event both for the sailors and for the Isle of Wight. I'd hope that it had carried on developing in the way that kept modern sailors and the next generation of sailors happy. But as a sailor event, not as a sponsor event. And sponsorship is important to Cowes Week because it allows the sailors to go sailing. It's not the be-all and end-all, and I think it'd be very sad if it ever went that way. So I think not necessarily looking exactly the same. It's not going to, but probably not looking that far different, just to the casual outside eye, with lots of happy sailors at the end of the week.
Except, of course, perhaps in 10 years' time, an awful lot of those racing boats might be on foils.
That's fine. Development of boats is fine. You look at even the last 17 years, boats now, little boats, are going far faster than even the biggest boats did not very long ago. And that is actually a challenge for race management with such a big fleet. But we have everything in Cowes Week. It's one of the great things. Everything from the sort of 100-year-old wooden dugouts, as they're known, right the way through to fully modern carbon fibre machines. And that's part of the joy.
And you have 800 boats. How many people? recruit?
6,000 sailors, and the estimate from both the Isle of Wight Council and from the ferry companies and so on is there were about 100,000 visitors during the week, which makes it a huge festival as well as a sailing regatta.
And a huge boost, of course, to the Cowes economy.
Yes, and the Isle of Wight economy generally.
Yes, yeah. Well, Stuart, we're going to miss you. It's been great fun talking to you every year about the race. All I can say is good luck with your cruising, relax and enjoy it, and I'm sure someone will come along and say, we need someone with expertise. I know just the man.
Thanks, Robin.
So Robin chatting there to outgoing Director of Sailing for Cowes Week, Stuart Quarrie. Cowes Week starts on August the 8th this year and we'll be there for a special programme on Sunday the 9th. I'm Shelley, Jory-Leigh, and I'm at the Marine Skills Centre in Woolston, which is an amazing place with lots of different rooms here. I'm here with Gary Fisher, the centre manager. And Gary, we have come into a room which I obviously recognise because it's full of engines. Tell me what goes on in here.
Okay, so this is the engine workshop where the students come through to learn about diesel and petrol outboard and inboard engines. So in front of you, you've got a whole line of running engines from the 1GM right the way through to the larger 12-litre Volvo Penta down at the far end.
Yeah, that's a beast down there.
Yeah, they're good size engines. They both came from tugboats. They've both got AC generators on the back, and one of those could power our building quite happily.
I was going to ask you that. How do you get all these engines? Are they donated to you, or do they sort of are they broken and come to you and you have to mend?
There is a mix. We've got the two Penta 2030s. They came from a donation from a link we've got with the Hamble School of Yachting. Those have been totally rebuilt. The Pentas we bought, as we did with the Cummins as well, but we've just had some donations from Yamaha UK. So we've got a couple of running engines from those in the last couple of weeks.
Is this brand new one down here? Let's just go and have a look at that.
Yeah, the jet ski engine. It's a bit of a beast.
So this has come out of a jet ski?
Yeah, it's a 1.8 petrol engine.
It's a big jet ski?
It's a huge jet ski, and it's got a massive turbo on one end, so you wouldn't want to ride that too far for too long.
Wow. Let's go down to the great big engines at the back. Now, because you were explaining to me earlier that you can actually run these, so you've got gallons of water coming in from somewhere. Let's go down there and have a look.
So what we've done is we've replicated what you would expect to see in any small commercial ship or large leisure vessel. So we've got 1,000 litres of water outside, so we can simulate the raw feed coming in from the sea. We've then got the exhaust, which is fed out through the silencers and then out through the side of the building. And then we've got the fuel tanks and all the associated systems. So the students can come in, they can do their pre-start checks, they can get the engine up and running, and then do their post-start checks to make sure they've got water flow, exhaust flow, and everything's working as normal. I
need some of these engineers. How many could I have? Could I have 3 or 4 boys?
I'm sure we can sort of free a couple of those up for you.
Now, you were saying you're actually going to make this harder for the students, aren't you, in the future? You've got a future plan. Tell me about that.
Yeah, one of the ideas is to try and make this into an engine room. So we've really got a grid floor down, so you can see the floor plates actually replicate what you'd expect to see in a larger vessel. The idea is to put a stud wall in, a watertight door, so actually it does look, feel and smell, which is the important part, like an engine room. Yeah, and they're going to be more cramped, and they're going to have to get in and underneath and in a cramped space, which is what life is about in an engine room. Yeah, they can sort of see some of the engines on frames, and actually it's really easy to get to the components. But, we know ourselves, when you actually get on board, it's never that easy. So we want to try and replicate that. I've been sent down to mend some of my engines sometimes because I am actually smaller than the engineers, and I'm the only person who can... So I'm down in the engine bay, and the engineers are at the top going, "Turn the spanner, Shelley, turn the spanner." I go, "I am!" So I know exactly what you mean. They can be very, very cramped. So it's great. You're giving the students a complete overview and sort of insight to what this industry is all about. Absolutely, yeah. We try and make it as realistic as possible, and the whole centre is all about industry working. So the students say it is like coming to work, not like coming to college. Which is exactly what a 16-year-old wants as they leave school. They can't wait to get out, can they? Absolutely. So, great. Let's go somewhere else. Okay.
The H2O Show
on BBC Radio Solent.
I'm Shelley, Jory-Leigh, and I'm at the Marine Skills Centre this week. I'm with a great guy. I've got Gary Fisher here, who's the centre manager, who's giving me a lovely tour. Gary, we're outside now. Looks a little bit derelict out here. Do you actually use this bit?
Yeah, we do. We're in a process now of getting the slipway restored back to a working condition. It hasn't been used for about 10, 12 years or so. So we've just steam cleaned off the slipway, a new layer of concrete's going back over, and that will give us a chance then to clear the back of the centre, and then we can use the water facilities a lot more.
And is that because you just want to sort of roll the engines into the water and run them, or are they going to be actually on craft that you've built and into the water?
No, the plan is to use the craft we've got a lot more. We've got a rib here at the centre, we've got some yachts, and the idea is actually to get them out into the water and get the students some sea time. Perhaps look at powerboat level 2, some VHF qualifications, just to go alongside their engineering and boat building.
Oh yeah, perfect qualifications. And it would be good if you could sort of get them out there on an engine, a rib or something with an outboard engine on, make it break, make them mend it at sea. I can help with that if you need if you need any help breaking engines. We're just stood here right under the Itchen Bridge. I mean, it's a beautiful view of the bridge. There's a lot of history on the water here, isn't there? Tell me about the history around here.
There is. Actually, the site we're on was the original location of the Spitfire and Supermarine factory.
Wow.
So originally, R.J. Mitchell designed the Spitfire on the ground that we stand on. But prior to that, during the Schneider Trophy in the 20s, the slipway that we have was actually used to launch the Schneider seaplanes. It was all part of the wider sort of Supermarine works, which extended from corner to corner across the front of the wharf.
Yeah.
I believe in 1940 it was bombed during World War II, and then the Supermarine sort of distributed across the city. And this became a smaller link in the wider chain.
And this is a great area for marine industry, isn't it, in Southampton? I mean, because you've got the hovercraft specialist down there, you've got the Jubilee Sailing Trust. It's actually a very good area for the students to meet other people who are already in the industry.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, we're central really to the whole Solent marine scene. You know, we've got the Hamble River just 3 miles away. You know, Lymington is just round the other side. Hythe, as well as what you've said, Griffin next door, Oyster Yachts, Itchen Marine straight across the water from us. So there's absolutely loads and loads of industry, as well as, you know, we can see Eastern Dock. It's absolutely fantastic for the students.
Brilliant. Right, let's go back inside and let's see if we can find some students and see what they're up to.
H2O on BBC Radio Solent.
Well, let's stick with history. Let's look back even further to 100 years. Attention's often focused on the trenches when the First World War is talked about, but there was also a significant war going on at sea and considerable loss of life as a result. Well, the Maritime Archaeology Trust have an ongoing project to map the wrecks of the ships that were lost at sea, and many of them are in this area. Neil's been chatting with Jan Gillespie from the Trust.
We lost a hell of a lot of ships, and people think about the trenches and the soldiers and all that in World War One, but they don't really think about the loss of the ships and all the people we lost at sea during that war, during that whole war.
Well, if we come over here, Jan, you've got a chart here which shows the wrecks in the Solent and in the Channel, and there's so many of them. 1,200 were lost in 1917 alone.
Yes, there were, yeah, and there's at least 700 wrecks just around this part of the south coast, all torpedoed or mined, or collisions sometimes in World War One during 1914 to 1918.
2,749 were lost by the British forces. I mean, that's an incredible number. 100 years ago.
Yes, yeah, and people just don't think of that, the war at sea. They just think of the war on land, which is what most people think about World War One.
Can you tell us about some of these wrecks that are littered in the Solent and in the Channel?
Yeah, some are very broken up because it's quite. Some places it's a lot more turbulent than others, and some are still stand there and you can still see quite a lot of the features on there. There's a particular wreck we have been diving, which is the Eleanor, and that was delivering mines to Malta, and she was on her way out there and was torpedoed, and only one man survived that, and we've dived on that, and there are lots of depth charges and mines still on board, so we've taken pictures and video of that to use this as a case study wreck, because we've got letters as well from the archives that people wrote to this one man asking if he'd seen their relatives and what were their last words. So some quite sad stories coming out of these.
And whereabouts is she?
She's off the southwest side of the Isle of Wight. She's on that map. somewhere. There's a load of dots on that map. She's one of these.
And of course, it wasn't only warships that were lost. I mean, we're looking here at sites for fishing vessels, hospital ships as well, merchant ships. And in fact, some of the warships were disguised as merchant ships.
Some warships they did paint them and try to make them not. You're right, yeah, did try. But they also had merchant ships that they disguised guns on, and they were called Q ships, and they got their name from the southern island where I think it's Queen's Ferry where it was actually developed. This idea that they would put these guns on, and then when the submarines came along and just saw it was a merchant ship and came up close, the ships would then drop the side of where the gun would be hidden under a shed or something, and it just looked like a piece of superstructure on the ship, and they'd drop down the side of the shed, and then they'd start firing at the submarines. So they'd lure them in and then play dirty, really.
Nobody was safe, were they?
No, nobody was safe.
Tell me a little bit about this project that the Maritime Archaeology Trust has running at the moment in relation to these lost ships.
We're running a Heritage Lottery funded project at the moment called Forgotten Wrecks of World War I, and it's running over 4 years, and we're trying to get a lot of volunteers involved in doing a lot of research because we're doing the whole of the south coast from Thanet all the way down to the Isle of Scilly. So that's covering a lot of wrecks which we'll dive on some of them, but we can't dive on all of them. So we're trying to get the public to do research, and anybody who's diver who may be involved in dive clubs to go out and get some information for us from these various wrecks, and then it'll all be put together. We've also got a travelling display going along the whole of the south coast, but all the information will be put together and to make a big database that people can search, and if they're looking for a particular wreck they might be able to see photographs or video of that wreck and find out all about the wreck, and also we go into schools and do an education package that way.
So are you asking these clubs to submit photographs to you so that you can build this database?
Yes, if clubs would like to work with us, we've got a volunteer dive pack that I can send out to clubs. It tells you exactly what we'd like from these wrecks, like measurements, pictures, video, and any stories of any. If they can do any research and find any stories, then any dive clubs that are willing to help, we'd really love that. And this is like the whole of the south coast of England.
Well, of these 2,500 ships that we know were lost, how many are you missing details on?
Oh, that's impossible to say, really. Yeah, that's impossible to say. We're trying to research as many as we possibly can. Of course, some of them are not really diveable. They may be on the chart, but when you get there, they're not really there, or they're buried, or they're so broken up there's nothing there. And if some dive clubs may be diving a wreck that they think that we've probably got no information on, that's even better. But even wrecks that there's information on, there are lots of little features within wrecks that still it's not been shown, and we could maybe go and take photographs of those for us, and people that are doing research are then interested to see that.
Okay, well, how can people find out more details?
They can get in touch with us. They can look on our website, which is maritimearchaeologytrust.org.
Jan Gillespie from the Maritime Archaeology Trust chatting to Neil Sackley there. And we've put a link to their website on our programme page for today. Go to bbc.co.uk/Solent. I'm Shelley, Jory-Leigh, and this week I'm recording the show at the amazing Marine Skills Centre in Woolston. And there'll be more from here shortly. But last year the Coast Guard Service went through a major restructuring process, which led to the closure of stations at Portland and Lyon-Solent, as well as others around the country. The National Maritime Operations Centre in Fareham went online in September, taking over responsibility for all the UK waters. 6 months on, and we were granted special permission to see inside the high security centre. Tracey Clarke spoke to Operations Commander Stephen Carson.
Well, we're quite privileged, really, because we're here at the nerve centre of what I would call the Coast Guard, but it's not actually the Coast Guard itself, is it?
Well, it is the nerve centre of the Coast Guard, but we obviously do a lot more than just search and rescue. We monitor vessels around the UK coast and further afield. We also make sure that we minimise the effects of pollution on the UK coastline.
So this is probably one of the few places that you think of as a Coast Guard where you can't actually see the sea. We're looking out here at, are we allowed to look out here, at the sort of centre of operations, and what I can see is an awful lot of monitors, a very huge map of the UK, timing. Tell me what's happening here.
So in this centre, we have a national focus. This is the heart of our national operation for the whole of the UK, for 1.25 million square miles. You're quite correct. We cannot see the sea from here, but that's not a hindrance. We cover a large geographical area, so it's important for us actually to get the right information at the right time regarding the location of any incident at all, and not putting any thoughts in our own mind about what conditions we can see out the window, because our incident we could be working could be hundreds of miles away, and the weather could be totally different than what we're looking out the window at. So it's better that we're getting the right information through our systems, as well as asking the right questions to be able to deal with that incident appropriately.
Now, when I first started on the water, I knew that there was a Coast Guard and I knew that there was some safety operation that carried on that was national. How did those two organisations come together?
So back in the early 2000s, the Maritime Safety Agency, which is primarily the surveyors surveying ships arriving in the UK and UK ships, and the Seafarer certification, and the Coast Guard Agency joined together to form the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. The work involved in both those organisations continues today. In fact, it's evolved since that time, but it's made us a more efficient organisation coming together.
So I'm tempted to ask, is there anybody who looks out over the water, or are all the sort of operations centres right the way around the country somewhere like here?
Operations centres are geographically and strategically located around the UK, which we have 9 of: Shetland, Aberdeen, Humber, Dover, ourselves here at Fareham, Falmouth, Milford Haven, Holyhead, Belfast and Stornoway. And the majority of the locations are at coastal locations and within ports. This one isn't, but as I said previously, it doesn't have to be. We obviously, the systems that we use, the alerts we get, 999 telephone lines, VHF, distress alerts by voice and also by DSC, also Inmarsat alerts, etc. We're not wholly reliable on spotting incidents. In fact, we would need locations around the coast if we were just relying on that. But we do work with other organisations, the likes of the Arnolai Beach Lifeguards, the National Coast Watch Institute, and they would feed any information into us, just like anybody else from the members of the public who would spot a distress at the sea through the 999 telephone network. They would report it into us. And obviously the modern technology these days hones the positional information down, because we get positional information with a 999 call, which automatically goes into our systems.
So, as I say, I look out here, and this is the sort of command centre for the whole of all of those other centres, is it?
Indeed. So we've changed our operating model to make us more efficient and to make better use of modern technology. So now we can spread workload around the country, because everybody throughout the UK, through all our operations centres, can see the same information. So we can balance workloads, so we can ensure that we're providing the same standard of consistency across the country. It doesn't matter what time of year, so everybody can share that information. This is the heart. So whilst we operate a large geographical area of the south coast of England from here, we also do national responsibilities from here too. The number of officers in this station gives us a lot more flexibility to be able to meet the demand. We've also got senior officers on duty 24/7, so we can provide that support, advice and direction as well.
There was quite a lot of worry and concern amongst the sailing community or the marine community that when the Coast Guard stations are actually sort of facing the water, closed, a lot of local knowledge would be lost. A lot of the sort of little places where everybody went, these Coast Guards kind of sitting down here might not know. Has that proved the case?
With modern technology, we've made sure that we have the best modern technology. So the positional informations, the databases that have all the particular headlands, etc. We've made sure that we've invested in those. But the people that have been familiar with the operating area, that's the most important part. And we've thankfully retained quite a lot of staff, both from the Solent area and in the Portland area. A lot of the Solent staff have come across and are now part of our major team here at the National Maritime Operations Centre, and they have been passing on their experience and knowledge to the rest of the teams. And the same with Portland. So the ex-manager of the Portland Rescue Coordination Centre, Mark Rodaway, OBE, now is a commander like myself here at the NMOC, and several of the Portland team are based here and embedded into the team. So we have brought experience with us into the new operation.
But presumably when they move on or retire, will you still sort of have a familiarisation, or is it literally just on the screen familiarisation?
No, it's they have to do assessments on the geographical area that they're responsible for. We will obviously build the experience and knowledge as we become more familiar, and as that experience is promulgated out throughout the teams, and of course as we deal with more and more incidents. But what is vitally important is that we are able to provide an efficient service with sufficient number of people that provides us that flexibility, but ensuring that we provide a high quality service to those who need it.
So looking out here, it looks a bit like mission control, actually, because there looks like there's a very important desk at the back. Is that where everything is commanded? That's your desk, is it? So if there's a typical incident, let's say, would it be an EPIRB incident? You'd receive information from a distress call. What happens? What happens from the back, sort of to the front?
Okay, so it actually works the other way around. It works from the main guys and girls operating the system. So they would receive distress alerts. We would categorise each alert either into the distress, the PAN phase, or the safety phase, and that would tell us what level of response we require. Depending on the severity of the incident, would mean what escalation we would need to take place. So, do we need to put other plans, as not just the search and rescue plans? Obviously, our ultimate aim is to save lives at sea, but our other aim is to reduce and minimise the effects of pollution on the UK. So, if we have a major incident, we could be running the search and rescue phase, ensuring that we rescue all survivors, but also at the same time running our counter-pollution phase and our vessel traffic monitoring phase, keeping vessels away from that hazardous incident, so avoiding maybe drifting cargo that has gone overboard, but also implementing the counter-pollution and salvage plan at the same time.
That's presumably something new that didn't used to happen with just the Coast Guard.
It did happen, but it would have happened not concurrently, it would have happened sequentially. So this is the beauty of all being connected in one virtual team, that we can direct and support incidents not just from one location but geographically spread.
IT-wise, it looks like there's an awful lot down there. What kind of systems do you have here? And presumably you have a lot of servers and backups.
Yes, it is. If anybody's ever been into a data centre, that's exactly what we have. We have multiple data centres, not just in this location, but in other locations as well, and we use cloud technology. So all our radio infrastructure. So we are the only national emergency service in the UK, and our estate is geographically spread. So we have 165 remote radio sites for VHF, DSC, AIS, MF, all spread around the UK, and all those radio sites now go into the cloud, if you like, which again it means that any operator anywhere in our Coast Guard network can pick and select what they actually need for that particular incident or that mission that they're doing, whether it be maritime safety information broadcast or monitoring of vessels at sea.
It's an incredible operation. I presume it's quite a large employer in this area as well.
It is. Well, we started operations from here officially in September of last year, but we've been working up prior to that. Eventually this centre will employ in the region of 130 staff, both within our maritime rescue coordination role, our VTM vessel traffic monitoring role, but also the new functions that are coming here as well. So historically, the search and rescue incidents for helicopters has been coordinated by the RAF up in Kinloss Barracks. By next year, that will be operating from here also. So eventually, 135 staff, both operational training and technical support will operate from here.
So just going to ask about your own career. Have you always been Coast Guard?
I joined the Coast Guard in 2002 at the lowest grade, and I worked my way up through the ranks. I started in Belfast, MRCC Belfast. Then I went off on a secondment and did 2 years at London, and then I went back to Belfast as one of the watch managers managing one of the 4 teams. And then about 4 years ago, I was promoted into the Rescue Coordination Centre role, managing the centre at Belfast. And then I was promoted down here last year. So, I've been with the Coast Guard for coming on 14 years, but I've been involved with boats since I was a kid. I joined the RNLI at the age of 17, and I was a lifeboat crew member for just over 20 years, serving on mainly Atlantic-class lifeboats. And I also was employed by the RNLI for 9 years as an assessor trainer, going around training lifeboat crews. So it's been very much part of my upbringing. My first job was on the pleasure rowing boats in Bangor Harbour back in Northern Ireland, and assisting clearing the rowing boats off the slipway when the D-class lifeboat was having to launch when the Maroons were fired. So that sort of sparked my passion.
Gosh. And how do you become one of the ladies or gentlemen that are sitting down at the moment? Thankfully, it's very quiet, I'm pleased to say. I guess they're talking about important operational things as opposed to last night's TV.
Well, it's not actually that quiet. So if the main board, which obviously we're on a radio interview, so you can't see physically, but the main map on the left-hand side is showing the incidents that we're having around the UK at this moment in time. It may look calm and controlled, but they're operating incidents quite normally down there. That's the way we work. We keep it calm and controlled.
Keep it calm. So how do you become one of the people down there?
So periodically we will assess how many staff we need. At this moment in time, we are recruiting, so keep an eye out for adverts, and that's mainly on the civil service jobs. The introduction grade to the Coast Guard is the Maritime Operations Officer role. We would ask, there's not an awful lot of requirements. Obviously good English and maths are good to have, and obviously the number of GCSEs for that. But we take all walks of life. We do have a lot of ex-Navy, ex-military, both Air Force, Navy and Army. But a lot of our staff come from recreational backgrounds, sailing, diving, kite surfing, etc. So they already have that passion, and they want to come in to a job that they enjoy doing outside of work. So so it is vast, the range of personnel that we have here. The recruitment process is quite challenging. So there's obviously the application form, the sifting, and then the assessment day itself. And then obviously when you get in, there's quite an intense training program with examinations at the end.
Very worthwhile.
Very much so. Very rewarding. Obviously I love the job that I do and always have done. And it's always great coming into a job where you don't know what you're going to get that day. It's not a mundane task that you're coming in to do the same repetitive task. It could be something totally different. And with the beauty of us all connected in the national network, we can make our staff more experienced by providing with the different ranges of incidents that they have. So that one day they could be operating several incidents within their close geographical location that they're working on, or they could be operating an incident out in the far Atlantic, or we could be doing a distress alert in the middle of the Mediterranean, or as of yesterday, a ship security alert off Africa.
God, that is a very, very varied. Mediterranean, obviously, a particular problem at the moment. You must be very busy there.
We're monitoring the situation and assisting wherever we can. We did have an officer deployed to assist the Royal Navy, obviously passing on our expertise into that operation, and we will continue to support as required.
Very difficult area.
Very, indeed.
So anything particular that stands out in your mind, any particular rescue that stands out? From
the Coast Guard perspective, been involved in many incidents. I was involved in the Hogaseka incident last year, or a few months ago, sorry. And that's from one extreme to the other. But it's always very, very gratifying and satisfying when you're able to put plans in place to ensure that lives are saved.
Operations Commander Stephen Carson talking to Tracey Clarke inside the new National Maritime Operations Centre in Fareham. And there's a link to the MCA website on our programme page for today. Go to bbc.co.uk/Solent. Well, Gary, we've moved into another room inside again now. I recognise the smell in here. Tell me where we are.
Okay, so this is our composite workshop, and you can smell the styrene just lingering in the air.
Now, what are the guys learning in here? I can see sort of funny little corner trays that they're doing there, and their little pots all by the side of it.
Okay, so we're just setting up for a Lloyd's inspector's course, which is running next week. But primarily in here is carbon composite technology, so glass, aramid and Kevlar, as well as carbon fibre. We've got an autoclave oven to one side. Across the other side of the workshop, our CNC machine, and then we've got the cutting bay round in the far corner. At the minute it's set out with all the benches, ready for the students to come in and then start their learning next week. But prior to this is where we built the 2 ribs for Ben Ainsley Racing.
I was going to say, there's a very important line going right up the centre of the workshop, isn't it? And I think you should keep that line there forever for historic purposes. Tell me about it.
I think we should. That was actually the centre line where Darren and the students, they set off for the stocks and the whole builds, ready for the moulds and then the boat build. So that's remained since Christmas, and that's been the datum to build the 2 boats.
And what are you building for BAR?
It's been 2 docking ribs, so 7-metre ribs, a totally unique design. The outboard is actually in the centre almost of the boat, and that allows 360 movement, and they're there as tugs or tenders for the America's Cup craft.
So you're basically surrounded by tubes, so you can just buffer up to the yachts at any position on the rib?
Yep, absolutely. So it's a standard rib, as you say, inflatable tube around the whole outside of the boat. Nothing on the transom, as you would expect to find, but in the centre is a well, and the outboard lives in there. So the outboard can turn through 360 degrees.
And propeller goes sort of straight through the middle.
Yeah.
Must be quite hard to drive.
I think it's going to be challenging. Maximum 5 to 6 knots, nothing faster. It's not a planing hull. So, it's just to move the craft from Canberra out into the Solent, and then also in Bermuda to get the boats moving across there as well.
Will the students ever get to go out to see the boats in action?
We're certainly hoping so, yeah. We're waiting for the boats to come back now from tubes and painting. Once they come back to us, we then fit the engines and then do the final checks. We then hand them over to BAR, but we're certainly hoping to get students out on the water with them for sea trialling.
I was going to say, obviously down the new slipway, will they actually be able to test them out in the water there when they're all finished?
We'd like to think so, yeah.
Fantastic.
If we can get that range of BR, that'd be fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, you must call us back when you do that, because I'm very intrigued to see how this works. It could be a new race boat for me, because I'm rubbish at parking. That's absolutely fantastic, Gary, and we're actually going to hear more about this rib that you have built for BAR when we do our special America's Cup programme in a couple of weeks.
H2O on BBC Radio Solent.
I'm Shelley, Jory-Leigh, and I'm at the Marine Skills Centre here in Woolston in Southampton. We're just on the edge of the Itchen River, just under the Itchen Bridge. I've got with me Gary Fisher, who is the centre manager, who has a vast knowledge of this place with history and students and everything. Now, we seem to have lost all our students at the moment. I think they've all gone off to lunch. Just show me around here. We're in the main workshop now, aren't we? Tell me what goes on in here.
Okay, so a combination of things. We've got the boat building on the side where we are at the minute. If we look across the other side of the workshop, we can see some of the outboard engines and the engine room. And then through the centre we have the workbenches and some of the craft that we actually keep here at the centre.
So let's work here first, right directly in front of us here. We've got a boat here, which, I mean, I know what's happening to it. It's being laid up in fiberglass, but you go into more depth for me. Okay, so this is our first year students. They're actually making an 8-foot open tender. They've got the mould, that's been polished. They then put the release agent in, the gel coat, and now they're just starting to put the reinforcing through the bottom of the bilge. And then the one beyond that, is that sort of a progression of this one, or is that something completely different? No, that's slightly different. That's called a Medway Dobble, which is a little sailing, almost a junk rig. Quite an odd design. It was actually from the Medway River, and it was used in the 18th century to carry barrels of fish from Chatham up into London. And my wooden boat builder was actually sort of over the moon when he had the chance to build it. And that's been a project that's been ongoing for some time. And that's all solid wood, that one? Yeah, it's actually 6mm marine ply as a construction.
but actually it's sort of bulkheads out inside. It's got a centre dagger board and then a rudder which comes back over the transom.
Now, I'm looking around here. I'm seeing a lot of wood. There's obviously some beautiful boats there and a fantastic canoe, all made in wood. I didn't think boats were made in wood anymore.
I know, it's a bit of a niche market. We don't tend to find too many boat builders from wood. A lot of restoration, and again, mainly the Americans are into their wooden boat building, but there are some very, very good traditional companies locally who do a lot of wooden boat restoration.
Let's just go and have a look at one of those boats that the students have made in wood. That's a canoe over there. It looks immaculate. It's so smooth and beautiful. I need to go round. We need to actually touch it,
okay,
because the finish on it just looks amazing. Wow, yes. That is beautiful.
It is. It's actually a cedar asymmetric American design open kayak. It's designed for one person. If you have a look, the shape is slightly asymmetric, so the seat will sit closer to the rear than it would towards the centre, but actually it's a very nice design. You actually sit very low down in the canoe, which makes it really stable.
Now, the students were saying that they had to actually build this really quickly.
Yeah, we had an industry week a few weeks ago, and we had 5 days as a showcase demonstration on our main campus, and the students built it in 4 days. Not quite finished yet, but the main bulk of the work is done.
That's amazing. That's really good. I mean, and again, that's great for the students to learn, because things in the marine industry do happen quite quickly sometimes, and you've got to get going. You know, you've got to get it mended and get the boats back out there immediately. So
yeah, absolutely.
They need to know the panic station.
Close time frames is what it's all about. Yeah.
Now, we've got other boats here all lined up. These boats are all projects the students are working on. What happens to them once you've finished? I mean, where do they go?
The canoe we've got our hands on, this is one we're going to keep for the centre. The one next to us is the first one they built out of pine. That's going to be donated back to a chap who very kindly donated a yacht to us. So that's kind of a sort of reciprocating thing.
Yeah, that's lovely.
So we try and do that. Some of the other boats we're going to try and get back out into the water so we can use them a lot more from the slipway and then up into the Itchen River and across into the docks. So it really depends on what the boat is and what value we can get from it long term.
I mean, I'm looking across the workshop now, and there's just everything here. We've seen the engine room, but then we've got all the outboard engines. We've got that. Is that like sort of carpentry desks there that they're all working on? This is for our first year engineers. So they learn to be an engineer, how to use and manipulate metal, how to produce different artefacts. Oh, so it's not carpentry at all. I'm totally the wrong thing. That's all the engines over there. Yep. Right. So engineers, again, if they're at sea, they may need to make a component. You know, you can't go to the shop and buy it 1,000 miles from land, as you know. Yeah. So yeah, they will need to be able to manufacture from mild steel, stainless steel. So they spend some time on the benches, but we've also got the machines. We've got the lathe and the mill, where they can actually start to manipulate metal. Gary, this is a really interesting one. I can see that it will be a boat one day, but we're a long way off. Yeah, it's upside down at the minute on the stocks. The plan is to build a gentleman's launch or a runabout, something very similar to a Chris Craft or a Reaver. Ooh, very nice. Yeah, very nice, highly polished wood, lots of stainless, and a big petrol engine sitting in the middle somewhere. The students have done a nice laminated stem. There's a Douglas fir keel, and then the transom is in place with frame number 1. The rest of the frames are across in the wood workshop, so next year they'll start to hang the frames and then start the planking. We'll then turn it over onto its keel, and then the engineers can start installing the engine and the systems. I want to come and test that when it's ready, please. You're welcome to. Thank you very much. Put my name on that one. Right, I'm moving across here. I've actually found a lovely student here. What's your name?
Cara Parsons.
Cara, you're a young lady working in the Marine Skills Centre here in Woolston. I haven't seen many women here. You were actually working on the Ben Ainsley ribs.
Yeah, I did part of the laminating for the sides of it, yeah. Just worked on it for a couple of days and got that ready to go on.
How exciting was that, to be working on something that you know, it's not like a project where it's in the workshop and it's going to stay here and maybe go on to the water. I mean, that's actually going to a hugely important team centre, Sir Ben Ainsley.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I enjoyed it thoroughly, just being there all day, I was like leading part of it. It was really fun, yeah.
Now, this is something completely different you're working on here.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
At the beginning of the year, we had like a day where we did enrichment and it was kind of an idea from all of us to start something like this, so at the end of the year we could race it and enjoy it. And this came about, and we decided to try and do this.
So and this is a canoe?
Yeah, it's like a kayak canoe kind of thing, bit of a mix in between. But yeah, it was very fun to do.
And it's all made of wood?
Yes, strict plank. Yeah, we're all new at it, so it was kind of a first try. So it's come out really well for all of us being quite new at the wood kind of thing.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Cara, good luck.
Thank
you. Work hard in a man's world. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
I've actually driven past this place many times, never realised what goes on inside. I may be bringing a few race boats down that I've broken, so I hope that's okay. But thank you very, very much. It's been really, really an eye-opener to me.
Good, thank you.
And thanks also to the staff at the National Maritime Operations Centre in Fareham for hosting us. And if you miss any of our programmes, there are hundreds of clips from the show to listen back to. Go to our website, bbc.co.uk/Solent. Next weekend, Powerboat P1 comes to Gosport, and you can hear all the behind-the-scenes action on next week's show.